So Queen have just sold their catalog, their music catalog and the rights to their likeness to Sony Music for $1.27 billion. Now, this in itself you may not think is dramatic news. It is the biggest deal ever compared to anything before it. But have you ever wondered how is it that on one hand all these music catalogs are selling for record prices, on the other hand the music industry, the traditional way selling records is dead, and in general streaming doesn't seem to be paying people anything? How do we reconcile the fact that you have record sales for the catalog, yet nobody is really paying that much for music? That's what we're going to get into. So, hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Guitar. My name is Utkarsh Mohan. I'm coming to you from Singapore. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please do like, subscribe, and share. It really helps grow the audience. And in general, if you're watching my channel for the first time, this is the kind of content that you can expect, where you see a little bit of the business side, the economic side, the potentially geopolitical side, definitely the philosophical side, interjected with the music industry and the world of guitars. Now, this is a very interesting one. I will draw on a few things. For those of you who don't know me, as always, my previous career was in the corporate world. I marketed one of the most iconic brands in the world for 14 years, and I was the head of marketing for that brand and a set of other brands for certain markets. You can see it over here. I am also a I'd say amateur musician, been performing for the last 18, 20 years, been playing guitar for 20 years, so that's me. So where do we begin? I think the first thing to note is when you and I think of Queen, what do we think of? We think of Freddie Mercury. We think of Bohemian Rhapsody. We think of Brian May's Stone. So much there. We think of it as a band. We think of it as music. But what happens is there are certain things in this world, certain properties in this world, very few of them, honestly, that transcend the field that they come from, and they become instantly recognizable assets. So let me put it this way. What do I mean by instantly recognizable? If you play the "We Will Rock You" beat, the whole world knows it. The whole world knows Freddie Mercury, from Latin America to India to whatever. So what Queen and Freddie Mercury in particular, I would say, have is they have instant brand recognition. Instant brand recognition is one of the most important things when it comes to anything. If you look at, say, presidential candidates in the US, I'm just using an example. I know I'm treading into some very dangerous water here. But one of the reasons why you have two relative incumbents fighting for the 2024 elections is because these are the two that the entire country recognizes, even though both of them are in their 80s. So that's one example where for someone to come out new and gain instant brand recognition, it is very, very difficult. And to be very honest, companies spend millions of dollars when they launch a product to gain instant brand recognition. When you look at the valuation of companies, how well the brand is known, how positively the brand is known is a big part of the valuation. So this is the one thing that I realize that people who have not worked in marketing, I mean, I worked in marketing 14 years, they don't recognize that, of course, there is a value to people liking you, but there is a value to people knowing you. So that's one thing to note. Now, what does this have to do with Queen? I think Queen is one of the most instantly recognized brands. I just mentioned that. And so the power of them is well beyond the power of only their music. The power is that if you have an iconic image of Freddie Mercury, the whole world will recognize it. If you have certain songs, "We Will Rock You," "We Are the Champions," the whole world will recognize it. That, in business terms, to have that level of brand recognition is gold. The second part of this links to what I was mentioning earlier in my previous video about the Economist interview with Andy Mooney of Fender, where the surprising data point was more people today are streaming than ever. So the numbers were more than 1 billion people. I think the numbers are close to 1.7, 1.8 billion people are streaming right now. And a bunch of them, the majority of what is being streamed is back catalog music. So you may have all the new artists today, but what people are actually listening to, and more importantly, paying to listen to. The streaming number that I gave you was the number of people paying to stream. They are listening to back catalog music. And you can bet that Queen is right up there in terms of back catalog music. So this is a recognizable brand. This is a brand which people, consumers, are engaging with on a regular basis. Never mind that Freddie Mercury, of course, passed away in 1991, 33 years ago. It is still relevant. It is still being engaged with today. So what you have right now from a business perspective is an iconic brand. It has certain iconic properties, all the songs, iconic images, Freddie Mercury, the iconic sounds, the songs, the whole world recognizes it. And it is something that has top of mind awareness, which means that it is not something that I am telling you about. I ask you, do you know this? So imagine if I ask you, what is name a brand of car, and maybe you say Mercedes, BMW, Toyota, and then you mention everything that you know, and then later I tell you, have you heard of BYD? BYD is a Chinese electric manufacturer, and you're like, yeah, I've heard of it. You have heard of it, but it's not top of mind. Top of mind is the first thing that you mention when we ask something. So Queen is probably right up there. If you ask somebody what's a rock band, a general public, not me, Queen would be up there, I bet. So for a business perspective, you have a brand with top of mind awareness, iconic properties, and very, very positive response to brand, which means that everybody kind of loves them. Queen is fairly universally loved. Now, what do you do with that? What you do with that is you know that you have properties that can be monetized. You can make a lot of money out of it. Now, we're coming to a stage where you have these iconic properties, these iconic bands, not brands, which are brands also. Their members are reaching a certain age. So these former rock stars who would never give it all up to the man are suddenly in a receptive state because they're aware that they're onto something. They have something iconic. They have something valuable. And they would rather see its proceeds probably being correctly valued versus they pass away and then their families and the estate fight over it and everybody gets a small piece of the pie. So probably for the first time, these folks are motivated to potentially sell bits of it, to sell the catalog. The second part of it is the companies who are looking at it, they're looking at, hey, these are brands that everybody knows, these are iconic properties, everyone's engaging with it. We don't exactly know how to make full money from it yet, but we do know that we'll figure it out. If you look at all the startups that were valued dramatically, like Instagram, I think was acquired for about $1 billion or something, some billions of dollars when it was very tiny. All of these startups, which nobody had any idea how to monetize, even Facebook in the beginning, nobody had any idea how to monetize it. What they knew is, what was common with all the startups with the crazy valuations is, they have a lot of users. They have a lot of people who are aware of it. They have a lot of people who are engaging with it, daily users, monthly users. Does that sound familiar? So you again have a property that people are aware of, they're engaging with. So from a business perspective, you're like, okay, so many people are aware of this Queen, so many people are engaging with it, so many people are listening to it. There are such iconic images, iconic sounds. I don't know how exactly I'm going to monetize it, but I bet I can. And I do have track record because there are all of these companies and ideas that I've invested in the past, which gives me a return. And this is not even like investing in an unknown company because it's one of the most iconic assets that you have. So then what happens is the business executives and the investment banks who try to help figure out these deals get together and they make all sorts of assumptions and all sorts of calculations to justify, say, a certain valuation for the Queen catalog. This is also a very interesting process. It often can be rather self-serving because investment banks are trying to close the deal. The executives who are working on the deal also wanted to close. At the same time, they have to justify a valuation. So it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic that happens. I mentioned in a previous video about the entire reverb thing, why reverb is the way it is. I mentioned two things. I mentioned a certain valuation for reverb. And what happens is when you have a certain valuation, people do a valuation, do the deal, and then later they figure out how to make up the money for the valuation. Same thing happened with the brand that I previously worked on, which was one of the biggest acquisitions. And then I saw for the next 15 years what the companies did in order to justify that very hyped up valuation to begin with. So what's happened here is Queen has had a good hyped up valuation. I don't know how to adequately inform whether the valuation is good or bad, but it is certainly a high number. Certainly through existing revenue streams, there is no way to make that money, but I bet that Sony Music, now they've acquired it, are going to figure out how can I make more money from it. There are a few ideas. I hope some of you remember the video I just made on the big change, that the way the music is going to change that you cannot imagine. Essentially, the crux of that video, in case you haven't seen it, is if you think that Freddie Mercury couldn't perform live, tomorrow it will be absolutely possible given the technology, and ABBA Voyage is kind of proof of concept. So there's that. Then you can imagine mega branding. You could leverage Queen branding for products, etc. There are 1,000 different things that you could do. So what's probably going to happen now is they have figured out, okay, we have got now the Queen back catalog. We've paid 1 billion for it in order to 1.27 billion. In order to justify this is the cash flow that it needs to provide over the next coming years. And we're going to figure out how to do it. It is literally selling out. That's what Queen has done. I don't entirely blame them, because I think it is fair for them to say that this is what the market values us as, and we want to make sure that our families and our next of kin are taken care of, because they're not getting any younger. So it's well fair to them. But let's just say that the brand and the band, especially when the existing members have passed on, is going to be entirely, and I'm using my words carefully, but is going to be properly prostituted towards the ends of justifying the high valuation that was paid for it. That's going to happen. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow. There have been some checks in place that they have done, the existing members. I don't know the details of the deal, but it is fairly clear that currently the live performances part of it, the existing band members are retaining, but nobody knows the details of the deals. I bet there are certain clauses. I bet what happens after they pass away. All of this has been thought through. That is how Sony Music and whichever investment bank advised them have come to this conclusion and this number of 1.27 billion. There may also have been a bit of a bidding war, I'm sure, because Queen is probably one of the most iconic catalogs, definitely the most recognizable catalog. I cannot think of any other band where you have two songs, We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, that everybody in the world probably knows, regardless of what language they speak. So there must have been a bit of a bidding war there. So what's the space? This is not going to be the first or the last one. Some of these catalog takeovers have already happened. But if I wanted you to take away one thing from this now almost 15-minute long video, it is all these old rock bands, these iconic rock bands. Stop thinking of them as bands. They are actually brands with high brand recognition and positive response to brand, with iconic assets such as their imagery and their sounds. And that is ripe field for the right kind of company and the right kind of capitalistic ambition to make a lot of money off from the awareness that these bands and brands have in people's minds. All right, I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you a little bit deeper perspective into understanding why such crazy numbers are being paid for the catalogs. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.